Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for being here with us today. I'd like to go into a further discussion about the Music Modernization Act, which was signed into law back in 2018. It established a new entity to administer certain music licenses and distribute the associated royalties. And streaming services transfer those royalties and data to the collective and meet certain criteria in order to obtain a so-called mechanical license. The collective, in turn, finds the proper copyright owner and distributes royalties back. So I'm interested in talking about that mechanical licensing collective. That is something that the Copyright Office oversees, is that right?
Yes.
And who are the primary stakeholders that are involved in that process?
Well, the music publishers, the songwriters, and the digital services.
And coming up on the 5-year redesignation of this collective, what would you say, are we facing a key moment here? What work and preparation is being done for looking at that 5-year redesignation?
We have issued a notice seeking public comment on the redesignation, and we're currently in the process of reviewing all of the comments we've received. The various time periods, I believe, are not yet final, so we're still receiving input and as well as analyzing it.
Do you have any ideas or suggestions about how that process might be improved?
We will have some suggestions once we issue our report.
Okay. So the timeline then would be, right now you're getting input from stakeholders, and then after that is complete, you'll be issuing a report, and that report is where you'll set forth any recommendations from your office.
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
And I just should say, I mean, we have issued various recommendations for the MLC's operations periodically. Meanwhile, it's not as if this is the first time we've engaged in any oversight, but this is the big reauthorization period.
And are any of the recommendations that you've issued so far ones that you would characterize as particularly significant, or things that you think are going to feature prominently in the reauthorization?
Well, a number of our recommendations have been about process, and my understanding is that the MLC has been generally following those recommendations. We are also finalizing a rule right now that has to do with termination rights and how that affects who is the appropriate recipient of royalties and at what point in time by the MLC. So that is likely to have a major impact, and that might figure into the final report as well.
Now, switching gears a little bit, I'd like to go back to this subject of artificial intelligence, particularly as it relates to deepfakes, misinformation. These are things that I know as members of Congress, we all continue to hear great concerns back from at home, as well as here in DC. And I'm interested in your office's, I believe you've either have issued or will be issuing a report on digital replicas. And I'm interested in your perspective on whether copyright law is potentially the right vehicle to address these challenges.
You are correct. We are going to be issuing a report very shortly in the coming weeks on the digital replica issue. There are ways in which copyright law can relate to some of these challenges, but it doesn't directly protect someone's identity against its replication. So what we have right now in the United States is a whole array of different laws that could potentially apply in different circumstances. So and a lot of them are state laws: rights of publicity and privacy, unfair competition, and then also the Lanham Act at federal level. So in our report, we're going to be looking at in what ways do all of these laws, including aspects of copyright law, apply to what is happening out there in the world with these new technologies, and what are the shortcomings or gaps, and should there be a federal law that can possibly fill in those shortcomings and gaps.
Can you tell us some of the ways in which you think copyright law may have a role or may provide an avenue for relief?
Well, to the extent that the person whose identity is being replicated is also an owner of copyright in a work from which the replication is made, they may have copyright claims. And there also could be possible claims arising from the ingestion of copyrighted works that feature the voice or image of that individual for purposes of training, machine learning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.